Hey guys, Dr. Brian here, and I am at Try and Run.
Run and Try Outfitters.
I always say Try and Run.
It's okay.
Run and Try Outfitters here in Wake Forest. And I'm here with Lee. And Lee is going to help us today answer some questions that we see at our office about shoes, shoe selection, what's the process, what's the best process based on what you're trying to do with your shoes. So we're going to run through some different questions with Lee, get his expertise in helping you guys get a little bit more information about what you should be doing in these type of situations. Even if you're not an endurance athlete, even if you're doing boot camp, doing CrossFit, these other things, this is still an important video to be watching or coming back to and checking out. So Lee, first question is, what are some of the priorities we're looking for with shoes?
So when we're looking at footwear, there's a lot of options. That's good, and they each option will cater to if the runner or walker or person working out is building up their base, learning to get more active, or whether they're having just the desire to want to run their first 5K or train for that half marathon. So when the priorities, we start thinking about, well, how often are the people using their shoes? Are they having some knee pain, ankle pain, or what do we need to do to ensure they're moving forward, feeling good, and pain-free? So with those priorities, we look at how much cushion does the shoe offer, how much support does it offer, the fit in the front, and we try to cater that to each specific need that the person that's looking to be active has. So that's kind of what we consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And going into that, the different types of shoes that we're seeing, what are some things that, there's a lot of different shoes now on the market. Yeah. So what are some things that you guys are trying to help people understand? From our standpoint, Dr. Chelsea and I here at the office, when we're referring someone to a place like Run and Try and help for shoe selection, because that is huge in terms of, if you are dealing with what Lee said, some aches and pains or orthopedic problems, we're simply saying, hey, our focus for what you think is that we think you need a neutral shoe, a shoe with a little bit of some support, and that's where we hand it over to Lee. Yeah. So that's where we'll have Lee go into some different types of options that you may be referred to or recommended.
We love that in the industry of shoes, the footwear is growing, is changing, and we're adapting with that. And thankfully, our customers and our active community is adapting with us. So when we talk the different types of shoes or styles, as we mentioned earlier, we've got the different categories. We have the more flexible cushion shoe, the more structured supportive shoe. Now we kind of have this category of the more natural lightweight shoe. And what's encouraging is that, well, with each specific their neighbor or their coach. So the fact that we have those specific needs, we can cater that to each specific person. But to give you an idea, just a brief overview, when you have a supportive shoe, that supportive shoe is there to help the arch, to build it up, to guide the foot. So that's going to be for that person that needs that support, that maybe their arch is rolling in. A lot of times you can look at your feet when you're standing and say, okay, it looks like my arches are collapsed or low. Well, if that's the case, we want to build that arch up and slow down that what we call pronation, or just that roll in. But there's some people that come in that they're like, hey, my arches aren't rolling in. And so we help them find that shoe that can keep them moving without having to do too much work. So that's when we start looking at a shoe that's more flexible, more cushioned. That's the neutral shoe. When you think of that term neutral, we're thinking balanced, even. So when you have a neutral shoe, a lot of times it's going to be the same density of cushion all the way around. So a lot of times you can look and say, flexible. Okay, that must be a neutral shoe. And again, that's catered to that person that's like, all right, we're moving forward, but I don't necessarily need all the extra help on my arch. And so that person will come in and we'll look at flexible. Then we also have that more natural running shoe. Now, a lot of people are asking us about to help that person run, hopefully with better posture, better technique, more steps per minute. And again, this is a lot to take on. Again, we're giving you a lot of nuggets of knowledge, but that's the purpose of kind of whetting that appetite. So you come into a store like this or talk to somebody like Dr. Brian here and say, all right, what do I need? Well, that's when we start helping you navigate these waters and show you that there's a lot of options, but we want to narrow that down for you, get you motivated, get you encouraged.
You will. And I will say, actually, let me say it all over again, is that there's a reason why I come to these guys. You can see it's the exact same shoe.
Yes.
So awesome. So we covered a lot of the different types of shoes. So let's go into a little bit more detail about, what's beyond just if someone needs that neutral and needs more support, what they're looking for in terms of the performance aspect. So, let's talk about let's talk about distance. So if we're talking about runners, you know, where do we, how do we decide how much cushion
which
do we
path?
need?
Yeah, and again, that's a common question. People coming in and saying, "All right, I'm running farther than I've run before. Well, do I need to change my shoe selection?" And a lot of times we approach that by saying, "All right, as you're upping your distance, as you're going farther, well, first thing we want to make sure is we're doing a new shoe, a fresh shoe, to ensure that we're cushioning the foot properly, giving the body what it needs." But a lot of times, yes, we will start thinking about more cushion, more shock absorption. Think about it. If we're going farther, we're putting more impact on the knees, the joints. Well, I want to make sure that shoe is doing enough work to keep you moving, keep you motivated, keep you healthy. And so, yes, there are times where we'll take that person that's upping their distance and say, "Hey, let's consider more cushion." But there's also times where we're going to say, "Hey, the formula's working for you on this 5K, 10K. Let's stay in that. Let's just get a fresh pair, maybe rotate in a new pair. Let the shoe have a little rest." It's hard to think about it that way, but yes, I think if you rotate that shoe as you're upping your distance, the shoe has a little time to rest. It's not staying so formed to your foot, not staying compressed. So those are the things that we start to kind of working with our person that may be pushing the distance a little bit. But the key thing, like we said, is the right type of shoe will ensure hopefully that you can go down these different journeys and stay moving. Yeah.
So, and with that brings up a new question. So if we're talking about rotating shoes, so like for myself, you know, my running is up to a half. I do, you know, up to an Olympic distance triathlons. You know, I have 2 shoes in rotation. Yeah. So at what point or how much training should someone really be looking at, I need a second pair of shoes in my rotation?
So a lot of times we'll kind of approach that, and it's still somewhat of an art in that it's going to depend on each person's activity level, how long they've been doing it. But a lot of times I start telling people, okay, as we get to that 4 or 5 days a week, as we're getting to that, all right, I'm feeling some aches and pains, rotating that second shoe in is important. I've often said if we get a new shoe, we jump into these waters of a brand new style as we're training for this next race. I always say, let's give it a month or 2 months. And if we're liking that, let's throw a second pair in. Or if we like that, maybe bring something similar that can complement it. So to answer that question, there's no right or wrong as we're approaching that second shoe if we want to dive into that territory, but I always want to establish, well, one, are we in the right type of shoe?
Right.
If so, okay, now we got that confidence, let's get that second model rotated in, hopefully ensuring that we can get a little more out of it. But again, that's still trusting what we're feeling. That instinct is there for a reason. Yeah.
Perfect. So with all of this, you know, we highly stress also strength training, and a lot of runners are now getting into, you know, into different types of you know, higher intensity stuff like Burn Boot Camp, Orange Theory, you know, CrossFit, things like that. So are these principles of what we're looking for with run shoes, can that transfer over to being the same gym shoe as well, or how does that process go?
Well, and for a lot of people that are going into that, adding that cross training part of their training to their workout, as they're doing that, sometimes they'll start by just using their running shoe and saying, you know, I'm nervous, I want to just kind of test these waters. And that's okay for that, you know, that intro to that new thing they're doing, but I still like the idea of catering a shoe to a specific need. So if they're doing that Burn Boot Camp, that CrossFit, well, okay, we may want to go to a flatter shoe, something that's got a little more lateral support, something that we can lift in, squat in, sudden stop in. So yes, if we really want to ensure that we're progressing the right way, and again, as you evaluate the time you're investing in this new workout, yes, I think there's times where we may call that shift and say, all right, let's go to that very light, flat shoe for our cross training, for our burn, something very sleek. And then, hey, still have my regular cushion for my training running miles. Right. Again, back to the common theme through all this is there's no right or wrong in the sense of each specific need, and we may cater to that specifically.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And you know, to that effect and analogy, you don't want to put mud tires on a Ferrari, if, you know, and vice versa.
That's right. Yeah.
So perfect. So beyond that, here at Running Try, I'm always gonna say it backwards. Right. And I practiced this like 10 times before I came in. So the big thing is, what's the fit process? Like, how do we go through kind of clarifying all these things?
So a lot of people, you know, that's the first thing when they come in, they're like, okay, I want to be fit for shoes. And certainly what a great first step to come into a store and say, my desire is to have good shoes, new shoes, I want the right shoe. So the way we approach the fit process is very important in that we say, okay, Can I size your foot? Can I use this old school Brannock device? But that's important because a lot of times people are in the wrong size shoe. Their toes are going numb, toenails are purple. I mean, just these horrible things are happening, and it's all stemming from just the wrong size. So we always start with sizing the foot, sizing the length of the arch, sizing the width. So once we get that number, okay, we've got that. We put that in our back pocket. Next thing we want to do is certainly ask questions. Well, what are you doing in this shoe? What's your goals? What is it that you want the shoe to do? By answering those questions, then we say, all right, well, now let's see what the feet tell us. So as I'm asking those questions, I'm already thinking ahead to, okay, when we have this person walk and run, I'm going to do that as a part of the fit process to ensure that, all right, what is that arch doing? Kind of going back to what we talked about earlier. Is it rolling in? Is it pronating? When does it roll in? Is the foot stable? And that then takes us to the next step to our process, which is very important, where we take the shoe wall, all these options, and kind of narrow it down and say, all right, what is the type of shoe that we need? And by doing that, that gives the customer some confidence to say, all right, okay, now I can kind of go off, oh, okay, maybe my friend liked this brand. Maybe the grassroots movement of this brand is appealing to me. So by narrowing down that category is such an important piece, because then we can say, now let's try some shoes on.
Right.
Let's try them on. And when we're trying the shoes on, it's very important that we now walk and run again. How's that foot looking? Is it stable? Is it balanced? Something that I'm sure you can attest to is we want to make sure the foot has even distribution, that the foot is balanced, because that means the knees are happy, the hips are happy, lower back. So we want to ensure the shoe's doing the right amount of work. And so now that we've tried some shoes on, we've got to make sure it's fitting right. So there's 4 areas I always check in that fit process. How much room do we have off the end on the toe? We need to have some space off the end. Where's the ball of the foot hitting on the shoe? We also look at how is it on the instep? Is it tighter? Is it loose? How is the heel fit? These are all key things that are going to ensure that the foot is fitting properly in the shoe and it's keeping us moving forward. Again, that common theme, forward motion. So that's our fit process, and we can cater that to specific needs. If we've got a track athlete coming in, or a burn boot camp, or a runner, we can still narrow down those options, keep them encouraged, keep them in the right shoe, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can attest to this too, because when I came here, when I first stopped in, I had the wrong shoes on. I thought I was in the right size, and I found out it was a half size too small, and my running and how I feel after running has changed significantly. So even the basics, and we talk a lot about that too with basics, is knowing the basics, knowing this is what creates a better foundation, so you can go and do these things. Definitely. So my last question, there we go. Sorry. So my last question is, let's say someone's been pretty consistent at a 5K, 10K level, or they run and they're ready to get into running. They've been kind of doing some running in their classes, and they feel like they're pretty good at it. So how do we know, what could be the process if I'm trying to go from, a 5K guy to now I want to do my first half? Is there beyond just some of the shoe, like what would we look at for a shoe? What will we change?
And this is where, again, as we're upping the distance, this is where we're thankful for certain trends. That can sometimes be a negative word, but I embrace it. When there's a trend of shoes, well, we have to respond to that and say there's a reason for that. So a lot of times now, as people are upping their miles, that's when we do really look even more closely at how many steps we're taking per minute, our form, what are the shoulders doing? And so if there are certain shoe models that can cater to that, well, we kind of want to visit that and dive into those waters. And so that's where, again, as we're going into that next step of their training or their goal, we're going to start considering, all right, well, what do we need the shoe to do? Taking a thick sole like this, it's going to transition us forward faster. Well, if we're going longer, maybe we need that shoe that's going to help us really work on not landing so heavily on the heel, or things like that. So to answer the question, we still take what we've used for that first distance, that 5K, 10K. How is it wearing? How is it felt? And then we're prepared to make the adjustments if needed, but not everyone will make an adjustment there.
Right.
Kind of going back to what we said earlier today, that fresh shoe might be all we need. Just that fresh version of what's worked gives that peace of mind. Then we keep moving. But in some cases, we'll look at that wear pattern and say, okay, if we're going to go another hour and a half on our run now, the shoe needs to accommodate that.
Right.
And the trends now we're seeing are more cushion,
right,
but on a platform that's flatter. And again, there's something to be said about that. But we also like that not everybody has to jump into those waters. We may go back to our tried and true supportive model if we need that support. So again, the key is just revisiting that store that you go to. Hopefully it's here at Run and Try, and we can then help us make sure we're moving in the right direction in the right shoe.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you'd like to let people know about shoes or about shoe selection or anything?
One thing that I always like to mention is, a lot of people get caught up on mileage. All right, Lee, I've done this many miles in my shoes. I should be getting more. And I always approach it this way. And especially if you're at home looking at your shoes wondering, how do I know they're broken down? I've done this many miles or this many miles. I want you to really be sensitive to that, because if we put a distance to it, we can always say, well, gosh, was I doing the right thing in my shoe or not? So I always tell people when they're looking at their worn shoes, the compression of the front, if it's compressing very easily and not rebounding, or if that tread is starting to wear in certain places, be sensitive to that. Whether you've got 200 miles or 400 miles, each person's journey is different in that, especially as we're doing more things in our shoes than we ever have.
Right.
So be very sensitive to that. We want to ensure that we're on the positive side of that transition to that next shoe, because if we wait too long, our knees are hurting, shins hurting, calves hurting. Well, we don't want it to get to that. We would rather be changing that shoe before that body starts aching. So be very sensitive to how that cushion's holding up, how that tread's looking, and be prepared to transition out of that shoe, even if it's not to a certain mileage maybe that you've set in your mind.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And of course, bringing the shoe in to here.
Very good point. Yeah,
it's an easy way.
A worn shoe never lies. I love the stories it'll tell us. It's pretty cool.
That's right. Well, thank you, Lee.
No, thank you.
We really appreciate this,
Yes.
and this is a lot of great information that you guys can take in, and we will get an article out on this as well and kind of pinpoint some of the bigger things that we talked about today
definitely.
too. If you are also interested, I will be doing a talk on endurance strength here at Run and Try. You got it?
Yeah. Thursday.
On Thursday at 6:30. So if you want to come and join that talk, we're going to talk about endurance strengthening for specifically endurance athletes and the different capacities you have to train. We'll be doing that. But hope you guys got some great stuff. Again, thank you, Lee, and we'll see you guys next week.